afternoon, gentlemen. We are back. We are here at the 46th annual IPMI conference. We are in beautiful Orlando, Florida. And
There's
today,
been 46 of them, huh?
46. We're already up to 46.
This is my 10th one. What about you?
I don't know. I'd have to think about that for a second. Could be 10. Yeah. As well.
Ed's been in it a long time. Precious Metals.
International Precious Metals Institute.
That's right. And we have the pleasure of sitting with Mr. Matt Watson today. So thank you for joining us today.
You bet. My pleasure.
We're going to have a few questions for you, so I'm looking forward to speaking with you today.
Not a problem.
All right. So I'll hand it over to you.
My only underlying question is, silver. What's going on with silver? What do you think?
Yeah, fascinating to watch. Everybody's all hung up on the immediate term, and, it's at 22, and it got about a 1% bump the other day, as gold got about a 1.3% bump.
Right, we saw
Everybody's
that.
worried about the tactical, and I just don't get hung up on the tactical in that way. If you're going to invest in silver, go long.
Right. And
the supply-demand fundamentals are they're there, right? It's a metal already. We look at the mining trajectory, it's going to decline. Ore grades are declining, and the cost of mining is going to get more expensive. And there just aren't enough new replacement mines to help pick up the slack. And it's this funny little thing, electronics, that silver, in addition to the solar PV that it goes into, and we're doubling electronics everywhere. I mean, my goodness, look at the trajectory that the semiconductor industry is on and the amount of spend that they are doing on new CapEx. It's just astonishing.
Oh, it's booming.
And with it, they're going to pull silver along for the ride, right? If you're going to put twice as much electronics in an EV vehicle, guess what? You're going to use twice the silver. It's funny how that works, right?
Funny, yeah.
Right.
And
They go hand in hand.
And solar PV, as you know, we want to talk about. Today, we're sitting at about 13% of the global, 13 or 14% of the global supply of silver goes into solar PV, one application. Each year, they do design thrifting on the loadings. And they've had a good trajectory. Literally, I could show you the plot over the last 15, just tremendous reduction. It's about 10x reduction. But they're kind of squeezing blood out of a turnip at this point, is the problem.
No.
And so that's one problem, is that the rate of design thrifting is slowing down. And meanwhile, IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Association, they want to push a really aggressive solar propagation ramp. And they want to see us grow by multiples of roughly 15 to 20x from where we're at today. Well, how do you do that, even with modest design thrifting year over year? The CAGR in growth outweighs the decline, and so your metal demand into solar PV can only go up like this. So there's a couple interesting things going on in that market real quick. One is, silver and solar PV rather. Solar PV gets cheaper every year. All these renewables get cheaper and cheaper. Stop. Game over. That was true. About a year and a half ago, there was an inflection point. Solar panels have gotten significantly more expensive.
Why is that?
Well, there's 5 material costs that are burning them. The first one, the biggest one, is polysilicon, the silicon itself that you grow a crystal and then you wire cut it into the wafers. That's gone up 222% in the past year.
222%.
Is that because of capacity issues or supply chain?
It's an
or what is
energy.
it?
It's an energy issue as well, and energy thrifting. It's a power-consuming 3-week-long process to grow a crystal.
Wow.
And they grow, dozens of these things. And you create a lot of wafers, obviously, for the cells.
Right.
So when your polysilicon's up, silver's up, the aluminum framing's up, the glass on the front sheet of the module is up. What else is up? Everything's up. All your commodities are up.
Yeah.
And suddenly they went from 29 cents per watt, which is a measure, you do $1 per watt measure. Suddenly they're at, we're at 38, 39.
That's almost 50%.
with some producer.
43 with some producers?
Yeah, so that's a big rise in your module. Because, but the renewables get cheaper every year. No, when you need all these metals, and the metals prices are climbing the way they are.
The demand goes up, the prices go up.
And silver's just a microcosm for, you could pretty much pick any other metal on the periodical table, same story. Right? Electrification of everything. If we're going to get away from fossil fuels, you need a lot of metals to replace those fuels.
A lot of copper.
Best question to ask your dear, lovely environmental friend, environmentally conscious friend. They love telling you how we're going green, we're going to convert all the EVs, and we're going to do 100% solar, and life is going to be utopia. I love asking those people, so you're into mining.
Right. And they have no clue, right?
And they have no clue.
They don't know anything about it.
Yep.
No, I'm
You
not
know, it's
into
funny.
mining. I'm
You
not
mentioned
into
that.
mining at all.
You mentioned
I'm not
that.
into mining at all. I just love turning that screw. Well, hold it. You can't be pushing for these specific actions
Right.
and not be for mining.
Right.
You're disconnected right out of the
They
gate,
go
like most
hand
of the
in
world
hand.
is.
That's right.
Like most of the world
Well,
is.
we were coming in from the airport yesterday to the hotel, and I was thinking to myself, wow, the freeway's crammed. In 5 years, we're going to be driving all EV electric vehicles, and in another 10, we'll be flying cars. Is that where they're driving us? That's what they want to do.
That's what they would
So
like.
you heard some of the numbers in the presentations today. So EV penetration rates, so we're sitting at about 6% of the global market is EVs.
That's low.
If you go back and you look at the metals prices, lithium, cobalt, nickel in particular, the three primary materials that go into the cathode on those batteries, you notice there was a bump in prices in 2018. This was at the very infancy of the ramp of EVs when they were trying to get to 1% market
Right.
penetration. And the mines had trouble getting spun up. And then finally they caught up and the prices came down on those commodities. That was 2018. Well, forget that. Now we're at 6% penetration. And in terms of multiples of mining, I mean, even the International Energy Agency is saying, hey, we need like 40 multiples of lithium mining. 40.
Wow.
We need 10 of nickel. We need X, and just multiples of mining over what we have now. And recycle, yes, we'll need recycle to help support that ecosystem, but that's not near enough. Not near enough.
But-
And there's a real just misconception, and the simple message to people, a Tesla battery, folks, is a 1,200-pound battery in the floorboards of the Tesla. 1,200 pounds.
That's a lot of weight.
We're not talking about a gram or two in an AutoCAD.
Right.
1,200 freaking pounds.
But didn't the president just invoke the Defense Production Act?
And so he did. They're doing a few things that actually one good thing I could point to is some of that act on what they're doing with rare earths. They're throwing some fundings at MP. I'm going to get it right. MP Metals, I think, is the name of the group, and their headquarters in Vegas with a mine just on the California side of the border, doing rare earths. One of the few rare earth mines. in North
One
America.
outside of Barstow?
Yeah. I mean, this is beyond the last India Concito. You're out in the middle of nowhere.
It's a different mine, okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's right before you get to the Nevada state line, right?
Oh, off of Zizek's Road?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And so, Obama and the Department of Defense actually both threw them grants so they're mining neodymium, rare earths. When you talk rare earths, by the way, rare earths are not rare. There's 450 years of known global reserves on rare earths. So the term rare earths is a little bit misleading.
Right.
Okay, they're just
Are they rare because
did it
it's
on
low
purpose,
production?
right?
yeah. Well, here's the hang-up on rare earths. You will generate 2,000 tons of toxic waste for every 1 ton you process. Oh, that's filthy. And what we've seen over the past 4 decades is suddenly China has absorbed all the rare earth elements into their space. I don't think they have the same ecological and environmental concerns as we do. And my first hint at this was the acid lake that they have produced out
I saw
back.
pictures of
gonna ask
that.
you on
I'll
that.
show you pictures tomorrow on the
Yeah.
presentation I'm doing tomorrow.
I've seen those.
And don't worry, it's only a small lake, about 6 miles in diameter,
Oh my gosh.
completely dead, not lined.
Not lined.
Seeping into groundwater. And don't worry.
Oh wow.
Right next to that city where they do a lot of polysilicon, by the way, when it's gotten so expensive. Okay, so
it isn't-
maybe
it
an
isn't
ESG
green after
nightmare.
all.
Maybe an ESG nightmare a bit. And
Could
if North America, Canada, and U.S. would be allowed to generate sites, we can manage it so much more effectively. Manage the acids, manage the disposal, and do it constructively. That is a greening effort in itself, in my opinion.
Oh, absolutely.
And yet, when we talk ESG, people are just hand waving, as best I can tell. There's no real ESG. And rare earths is a perfect example of that. Critical to EVs. Why is rare earths critical to the EVs? By the way, critical to windmills.
Motors.
Magnets. Everywhere there's a
Magnets.
motor and a magnet.
Magnet. Yep.
It's magnets.
Right.
The premier alloy used for magnets is neodymium, Nd on the periodical table, iron, Fe,
Right.
and boron. So neodymium, iron, boron is the hottest, strongest magnet material you can get. My hard drive clients all freaked. They use in every actuator on a hard drive, there's batteries. Hey, how come this thing went up 5x in the past year, man?
Right.
and my message is, oh, hang on. You haven't seen
Right.
anything yet. It's going to get
You
wild.
ain't seen nothing yet, right?
Yeah, the Chinese control it all unless we're willing to invest in mining to go support this.
Right.
Your EV ramp and your windmill ramp are going to be challenged.
Isn't the biggest hurdle the environmental permits here in the United States?
And that's the
Even though we have
that's
the cleanest technology here?
so that's one of the
And
comedies
the
of it all.
adherence
Back
to
to
it?
this, I'm an environmentalist, but I'm not into mining. Yes, there are environmental concerns, and I think appropriately so. There's a lot more ESG concerns that we should globally have, like nickel mining. It's just atrocious what happens to the surrounding environment from nickel mining. And yet we're going to go turn that one 10x? Are you kidding me?
Yeah,
and we're going to let the
that's a
Chinese do it,
concern.
where they're just basically buying out Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, parts of the Philippines, and doing mining in a region that's known as the Coral Triangle.
Right.
And they have two ways of doing their
And they
process.
dump it in the ocean, yeah.
And so, 60% of your nickel reserves have iron in it, 40% do not.
Right.
So the Russians are sitting on a block of nickel that's iron-free. So that's battery grade right out of the
That's
gate.
good stuff.
Yeah, the Chinese are loving that. With this new Russian conflict, they got all this battery grade
Yep,
nickel.
that's right.
Well, they're left holding the bag. They've got all these laterite ore mines in Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, and whatnot that I was talking about. Those have iron in it. You got two paths to get the iron out. One is you do a smelting step. That smelting step, just for the iron, that's a second smelting step, will cost you anywhere from 70 to 90 tons of carbon for every 1 ton process. So it's a filthy CO2 emitter.
Yeah, that's
what
big.
makes batteries so dirty, right? The other option is to do what they call a high-pressure acid leach process, where you're just slinging acids like it's nobody's business.
Right.
Dissolution. In fact, if you could dissolution it on site, in fact, there are some sites in China where they just literally acid the hills and spray it, and they help break the material down. Anyway, when you do the high-pressure acid leach process correctly, you end up with a 5-micron, a very light, fluffy mine tailing. And if you can imagine being in Indonesia, Papua New Guinea, there's this thing they have there called rainfall. Huge amounts of bucket rain, right?
Right. So then
let's throw in some volcanoes and seismic activity on the Pacific Rim. Boy, mine tailing management's kind
The
of a
erosion going
big
right
deal.
into the ocean, right?
And so one of the options that they've come up with, the Chinese love to do, is deep sea mine tailing dumping. We'll take those acid-laden mine tailings and we'll just bury it out of sight, out of mind. We'll put it in a pipe, we'll run it offshore, drop it down about 500 meters, and then release it, hopefully at a depth as much as 1,500 meters is what they want to do this release into. But there's really no understanding of what the ecological impacts are to this. I can't imagine it to be good.
Right.
And they're doing it in a hypersensitive region. Again, I call it the Coral Triangle. 60% of the fish species are in that Coral Triangle between the Philippines, the Coral Reef,
Right.
Great Coral Reef, and Indonesia. That's the most.
That's a huge number.
Yeah, and we're doing this there? Are you kidding me? Now, tell me again,
what's
environmentalists,
gonna be the cause and effect
tell
after
me,
that?
environmentalists, what you stand for again. Please explain this to me.
So what do the environmentalists in China say about this?
Well, that's, and so then you get into, well, how clean are EVs versus ICE vehicles? Let's go down this path for a minute. Let's have a discussion. How clean are they? So they do studies. They call them LCAs. It's basically a lifetime carbon emission assessment, right? And they look at the materials in the mining trails. And there are some firms, like Volvo, did a very nice LCA the other day. One thing, though, they've taught the clean energy community to do on EVs is they do these studies at a presumed 10-year life of the EV, of the Tesla. And they do it in a contrast versus a 10-year life of the ICE vehicle.
Right.
Little titty problem there, you as a scrap guy would know. The average vehicle age at scrap is right now sitting at 19 years of age. Right. You're sitting at a little under 13 years of age, average age of the vehicle on the road when you look at DMV data, right?
Right.
20 years. How
So
long
it's not
how
real
long- how
world.
long are EVs going to last?
Right.
Fundamental question. How long are the batteries on the EVs going to last?
Not
A
gonna
lot
last-
less than
it's not
19
gonna
years.
last
10
that
years?
long.
19
No.
years?
No.
What's the CO2 impact of picking up your cadence on automobile recycle? Because why is that important? Well, the best LCA analysis I've seen came from Volvo, and they showed it versus a same exact model with an ICE, same exact model with a full battery version, and it was only a 6.5% improvement over a 10-year presumed lifetime on emissions.
Just 6%.
6%. And I contend if you would do the full life of the ICE vehicle, twice that,
versus the
versus
EV.
either two EVs, or can you really do an EV
A battery
that lasts 20
replacement
years?
or a
Question
replacement.
mark.
Right.
A replacement battery.
There is one out there now.
And you look at, what causes these numbers to swing in these LCAs? Well, the raw material processing. Are they doing this extra smelting step? Are they doing, what is the total summation of your emissions and processing
Right,
all
of
these
course.
battery materials?
Right.
Guys, these things are not as clean as this is not the utopia we're heading for that people think we're heading for.
Right.
And you're causing all this collateral damage, mining all this along the way. And no, you're going to miss the numbers. So the latest thing on EVs that just thrills me to death is here's the European Union, their parliament, of
let's hear
unelected officials.
Let's hear what they have to say.
We were discussing this on the plane here.
Yeah, we were.
They just lay down a mandate that by 2035
Yep.
there will be no more ICE
Right.
And when they say no more ICE, they also include hybrids.
Right.
Oh,
which
really?
scares the bejeebies out of me because the
Yeah.
hybrid is an ICE as well, right?
Absolutely.
You could have a gas or a diesel
Yeah.
hybrid, right?
Well, let's not forget the one thing that they also did at the same time. They eliminated the carbon tax on personal jets in the EU. The Parliament did. So it doesn't make sense. They're doing two different things
One of the few places
here.
I'm in favor of a carbon tax is on this battery supply chain in particular, right? If there are really greener process streams, they should be given a premium and treated as such, right?
Yeah, I agree with that.
And we should be penalizing these bad polluters. We cannot let China keep behaving this way. It's that simple. And right now, nobody's stopping them. I go to precious metals forums where we have these ESG breakout sessions. What are we doing about ESG? It's becoming more important.
Right.
Show me the money, people. I have seen nothing.
Wow. Why is that?
Boy, that's a pretty stern comment coming from me.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Here
absolutely.
at the IPM. You know, the semiconductor industry, at least they had the balls to go create with the Congo, the Democratic, the DRC, they created conflict minerals.
Right.
To highlight the strife. Since the mid-'90s, there's been about 6 million killed in that region, including 70% of the Rwandan Tutsis. By the way, there's a label for that. That's called genocide.
Yeah.
So really pretty ragged region where a third of the country is controlled by armed militias.
Right.
And unfortunately, cobalt, tin, and tantalum, tantalum, tin, what's the third T? Titanium
Titanium.
and gold coming from the Congo are all treated as a conflict mineral.
How about copper?
And the electronics industry did a good job standing up making noise about this.
Ah.
And it wasn't a perfect, approach, but at least they did something,
Yeah.
right?
Something's always better than nothing.
Right. We got to stand up and push back in a similar way on the bad processing of battery materials.
Yeah.
It's appalling. And for those of you who think that we're going to, achieve some massive 50, 60% penetration level in EVs shortly, forget it. We're at 6%, and we're going to start seeing the mining situation choke en route to 10% in a big, big way.
Wow.
UBS, good analysts that have finally kind of caught up to my views on this, they give you the next thing is sequence. Nickel will get bound up first, then cobalt, and then lithium third. We'll get kind of hamstrung.
Cobalt, lithium.
Yeah, they're doing things in designs. They're trying to go to more lithium-centric designs. Even that's avoiding nickel and cobalt. Even that's not enough to.
Well,
save
you mentioned that the EU
landscape.
has banned internal combustion engines beginning in
2035.
2035.
Yeah.
Well, didn't the California Governor Newsom do the same thing?
Well, there's a number of
6
people
months
saying the
ago?
same thing. So the problem with that is all your Toyota Priuses, all your hybrids. Think of it this simplistically: it's a small battery.
Right.
Just keep it that simple. Prius, when they first launched, it was a 4.4 kilowatt little battery versus a Tesla today averages like 82, 84 kilowatt hours. So a much bigger battery, right? The Mirai, to get longer range, fuel efficiency, they doubled the size of it. They're now at 8.8, and that's pretty typical, 8, 10 kilowatt hours. So here you are with a hybrid 8 to 10 kilowatt hours versus a full-size Tesla 82. You need 10x that, right?
Yeah, that's large.
So
Doubling.
let's
10x.
take
Big batteries,
30
yeah.
million, 40 million hybrids off the road, and instead let's use 10x the higher amount of lithium battery metals. Oh, gee, this is going to end well.
Right. That's not even feasible.
Just to
today.
give you some numbers, the European Union's actions equate to about 2.1 terawatts of additional battery demand over the trajectory that we're already on.
Terawatt.
They basically want to double the battery market with that decision that they just announced.
Wow.
If they were to execute on it. They're not going to be able to execute on it because they're not going to have enough batteries.
Right.
They're not even going to be close. So is this
Well,
just all
that means-
whitewashing and hand-waving and, oh, look at me, look at me?
No, it's going to piss off a lot of environmentalists that can't get their way on this issue.
Yeah.
Right?
So take a look at the emission numbers, people. It's just frightening. Meanwhile, the one truly emission-free, or closest to emission-free that you can get is these fuel cell vehicles. The problem there, even the Toyota Mirai, 17 grams of platinum in the latest generation Toyota.
17 grams?
Well,
Wow.
you got about what's in an AutoCAD today? About 0.4 grams?
Yeah.
And after the platinum for palladium design
Swap.
swap, maybe 0.9 grams?
Has to be more.
Okay, versus 17. So even if Toyota continues to design thrift and cuts that in half, there's only so far fuel
Right.
cell vehicles can
This
go.
is something
Right.
we discussed 3 years ago. Look at the difference between AutoCAD and
Yeah.
those new technologies coming forward, and how much more PGM demand is
Oh, yeah.
coming in the future.
Right. I mean,
But at least that's a solid system that will have the CO2 impact that's profound
Right.
that you want, right?
Right.
That's the benefit of the fuel cell vehicle. So I'm a big fan of the hydrogen economy. I think it's going to happen. And when I say hydrogen economy, it's not just the vehicles, it's not just light-duty vehicles. There's a whole number of industries that want to green up. Green steel, green ammonia
Right.
being two of the more prominent.
That's right.
So, I have hopes that those efforts will get us there ultimately.
Well, I was going to shift the subject to ask you about power generation and battery usage for recharging over the next decade or so with all of these new. You come home from work every night, everybody plugs their
Yeah.
rechargeable car in, their EV,
and turns the air on.
and
'cause
turns the
it's
air on.
hot
You had
summer.
a power shortage 2 days before
This week.
What happened over at your
Yeah.
house? It was
What's
Almost 3 hours. California.
Southern California.
Southern.
Yeah.
Yeah, so your power went out for 3 hours. Was it announced?
No.
Okay. So what's going to happen when all of these vehicles plug in at 6 p.m. or 7 p.m.
Yeah.
at night to recharge?
So this is one of my big hang-ups on why I think we're kind of cornering ourselves into a PGM market that's not big enough. We actually need to go double the rate of mining on PGMs.
Oh, we'd have to.
And I think we need to start now. It takes 15 years to get those mines to get productive, so you need to go now, and it's already too late, basically.
Yeah. How does that happen?
I think the PGMs are the much safer known play. Again, you got some 200 years of reserves. We know where they're at.
Yeah.
It's not a big exploration thing. The bad news on the PGMs is the ones that I want are not Northern Limb, not some of the cheaper new PGM mines that are being developed.
You want the one
that are shallower.
ones with
I want the deep
ruthenium
ones.
and the iridium.
I
Yep.
want the deep ones with ruthenium and iridium, in
Right.
it, right on eastern and western limb. But even then, there's plenty of reserves. We know where it's at. We can do it. And I know this sounds just gross for me to say it in these elusive terms, but $1 trillion, $1.5 trillion. Throw that at the mining and you solve the problem.
Wow.
And you'll get bigger penetration there and actually have a bigger CO2 impact than the batteries, in my view. Now, and I throw that trillions around loosely, but I mean, the way we're throwing around Green New Deal dollars.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Right?
It makes sense.
Yeah, you'll have to build out more power generation to meet the demands of the smelters
So,
as well.
so the generation again. I went through that today. I showed a chart. The IRENA, the International Renewable Energy Agency, they want to see the power grid triple between now and 2050. Why does it need to triple? Well, 1/3 of it is for the electrolyzers. When you hear about all these green hydrogen projects, and I don't care if it's a PEM technology, an alkaline, an AEM, or a direct methanol fuel cell, doesn't matter. They're all energy hogs. Just about equally energy hogs. And so they need to build out the power grid just to power the electrolyzers to generate the green hydrogen, right? And then another piece of the growth, about half of today's total global power grid needs to grow by 2050 just to do the recharging that you're talking about of the what will then be some 2 billion EVs on the road. Yeah, you need a different power grid than the one you have today that can support that.
We don't have anything that would sustain close to that number.
And so we're going to triple the power grid. So, by the way, copper, aluminum, silver, ding, 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 investors. The light just
Right.
went off. Right? Those are your 3 power transmission elements. Silver, yeah, we see that in all the high
It's interesting because
we see that in all the
I
electronics.
go back a lot of years in the precious metal industry, and everybody was always talking about hard money asset investing versus keeping your capital at dollars.
Right.
And it was, the dollar's going to weaken. That's the case for investing in silver, which is not what we're talking about here.
Right.
We're talking about demand versus
Yeah.
a hard money, soft money scenario.
Right.
If I could show you the supply and demand chart right now, about 1/3 of silver is jewelry and investment type of products, right?
Right.
That shift is going to get pinched in my mind, right? The true industrial demands, including solar PV, including all the electronics
Right.
growth, takes up your silver. Right.
Oh, it's going to gobble it up.
And so this, I keep pushing back on my buddies at the Silver Institute. By the way, I have a white paper coming out, might be even today, from the Silver Institute on brazing materials.
Yeah.
I work with them all. But anyway, I get them a little bit fearful when I talk about, hey, by the mid-2040s, all that jewelry and investment demand stuff is now going to be active industrially.
Yeah.
So what does that do to the investor landscape and jewelry landscape? Interesting. Fun to watch how that plays out. So,
Wow.
What do they
Very
say
interesting.
to that?
I'm just being more aggressive than most analysts in a couple ways. One is I'm showing it, you can call it a forecast, maybe it's a crystal ball through 2050, but you got to show some trajectory of demand.
So-
I have some sense of which metals can be replaced and which ones, different applications can be replaced versus not.
Yeah.
I know what a lot of the design thrifting trajectories are and what they look like. That's kind of my bag. That's what
Yeah.
that's
So
where I focus.
describe to me but your type of clients.
Sure, I have people in mining that buy out my outlook, if you will, on the clean energy transition as it relates to them, so they can make investor packages and whatnot. I work quite a bit with the recycle world, AutoCat world.
Right.
AutoCats are interesting. With all the ICE vehicles on the road, I know this sounds crazy, we need to double the smelting capacity for AutoCats between now and 2040.
Okay, so where do you see supply and demand? I know that it's off this year somewhat. Do you see it?
Well, yeah, and I think
increasing?
that's all more of a tactical discussion. But used cars, right? Everybody's clinging onto their used cars for all the right reasons, right?
Right.
Their blue book values have doubled.
Oh, yeah. And then some.
I'm driving in my family fleet, if you will. Right, I have one new car, and I got the kids driving, 20-year-old bombs, right?
You have to for insurance purposes.
But I mean, the number of vehicles on the road over 20 years of age is growing, not declining.
Yeah.
Well, plus we've
That's
had
right.
a big downturn in new car sales. I mean, we talked about that, in our last podcast. It's about 30% down, the numbers. So
Right. Oh,
That's why the used cars, they just keep going
my family
up and
keeps
up in
telling me,
price.
get rid of the old Suburban, Dad. Why?
Yeah.
The whole family fits.
Right.
Plus friends.
Gotta love those old Suburbans.
Yeah. So tell me.
And by the way, the Chinese buying characteristics, as they've suddenly have become wealthy, it's amazing how many SUVs they want as well.
Oh, of course. It's a prestige thing, right?
It's a universal. It's not just an American thing.
PGM demand
Escalade.
increasing in
Yes.
China, right?
Oh, yeah.
As far as the IPMI is concerned, what do you really get out of it? I mean, is it more of a networking thing?
Well, most of my
or-
clients are IPMI members, right? So again, I do recycle community, mining community, the chlor-alkali industry, which uses a lot of ruthenium and iridium.
Right.
Two of my favorites.
Right.
Hard drive industry. I've got clients that are pretty diverse. Some of the major processors are using
Right.
me on specific market research
Right.
to help them on business development cases.
Right. So I'm just saying, to make a case for someone who might be in the industry but not a member of IPMI, do we see a good value in it? I personally do.
Oh, absolutely. We all do at the table, for sure.
We have this conversations with the trader community all the time. For those of us who've been in this sport for a while, the number of traders got cut in half, if not more,
Right.
over the past 15 years, right?
Yeah.
There used to be a lot more precious metals traders. Now it got pared down. And here we are in this mineral super cycle where you can't get enough copper, you can't get enough aluminum, you can't get enough anything, right? And they're all climbing. And suddenly these disciplines of having really good expert commodities people is taking a premium. There's a lot more shops. If we're going to control costs, we can't just throw this at purchasing Joe Blow. You got to get a real talent on this to manage this
That's right.
commodity,
Yeah.
right?
That's right.
And that's happening more and more. And so I think there's a reversal in trends going on now where the community of metals specialists is growing.
Yeah, that's good.
For the IPMI, they're focusing on the 8 classic precious metals, which is fine. That's what they do.
Right.
But my list obviously has grown, right? I'm chasing some 20 elements now that
Right.
I think are just.
Well, I've seen a lot of newer, younger faces coming to these conferences.
Yeah.
So I
That's
think
very
it's
good.
great. The organization's growing.
Yeah.
We're past COVID now. Last year, Reno, we had light attendance compared to this year.
No, good attendance this
Yeah,
year.
Really
very
good
good.
attendance this year and good involvement. Some great sessions.
Yeah.
I know you were speaking twice this week.
I speak again tomorrow morning.
Speak again tomorrow morning. That's great.
So you're going to go off on some of these ESG themes and
Yeah.
beat on the battery front some.
Beautiful,
Make sure.
beautiful.
How do we get the voice to the right people?
I've had miners that have told me you got to start doing 3-minute little blurbs and YouTube away and just social media away and start
Oh, wow.
messaging. They're challenging me to go approach this differently and.
Right.
And
Not a bad
I'm
idea.
being an activist because I don't want to get in the way of the clean energy movement. I'm all for cleaning up the environment.
Yeah, we all are.
I mean, I got 2 million frequent flyer miles. I've spent a lot of time in China hubs. I don't
Right.
want to live in that air
Right.
quality.
Right.
Right.
End of story, no doubt. I want productive solutions. I just see what we're doing as being a shotgun, a slap of metals around.
Right.
And it's,
Well, I think
It's-
raising
and it's- and
awareness,
it's- and it's
having
gonna-
these conversations
Yeah.
is very important.
yeah.
And networking.
No, and I think it's almost, the present strategy is almost doomed because of inflation.
Yeah.
In fact, now there are more notable academic economists talking about the mineral supercycle and what you're doing. How can you raise the prices of copper and aluminum and steel and everything the way we're doing it
Right.
and expect everything to stay the same,
Right.
much less,
We're all feeling it.
right?
Oh, everybody.
And it's
is.
just beginning, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's a super cycle. Really is.
Yeah. This ammonia that they use for fertilizer that's so important, and we're having trouble with our food supplies and food stocks this year.
Yep.
It's all interrelated.
By the way, they, for the clean energy cause, they want to take that market and grow it by a factor of 6x to 10x. Why? It's actually a denser form of hydrogen, for all the right reasons. It's a
Yeah.
it's a better way to get to the hydrogen economy. It's cheaper transportation, and you can also, more importantly, they're talking about using ammonia as the feedstock fuel for maritime, for heavy duty shipping in the
Right.
future.
Wow.
Right.
That'd be smart.
But with it, they're going to need to grow the ammonia market tremendously. What's that going to do to? It's really an important topic. Fertilizer
Oh, absolutely.
and ruthenium's use in fertilizer. It doesn't get enough credit. The Haber-Bosch process. There are some people that look at the world population and they say a third of the world's population today is due to the development of fertilizers. Right? We wouldn't be feeding our
That makes sense.
folks the same way.
Yeah. Right.
Otherwise,
It's good
right?
stuff.
That's right.
Absolutely.
And we're going to need that more than ever. And then we're going to go grow that market by a factor of what? Ooh, some interesting times ahead. What is this going to
Man.
do to inflation?
Next few years is going to be very interesting. Stay tuned.
Yeah,
Yes.
definitely.
Yeah.
Matt Watson, thank you for your time today. We really appreciate
Yes.
it.
It's not a problem.
Definitely.
Yeah.
My pleasure. Always fun.
Now, for the viewers, how can they reach you? You got a website?
Sure, yeah. So again, my name is Matt Watson, Precious Metals Commodity Management, LLC. You could go online and find Precious Metals Commodity Management. You'll find my website. I do a newsletter weekly that's free. You could sign up for it there. Get on my mailing list. You got to get a sense of my views. I'm speaking and doing interviews, literally every other week. I'm doing one. So
Good stuff.
I'm trying to increase the amount of messaging and broadcasting.
Oh, that's good, and that's important.
Yeah.
So we appreciate that.
Look
We
forward to having
appreciate
you
your
back
time.
again.
You bet,
Yeah,
buddy.
absolutely.
My pleasure.